Welcome to Exhibitor Lounge, sponsored by ExhibitEdge.com. Now, I'm your host and your trade show mixologist, Michael Gray. Here each week you receive simple, practical, and proven tips to improve your trade show marketing strategy, maximize your budget, and get better results. All right, well, the idea for this video came about 3 weeks ago or so when I was talking to a client who is getting ready to exhibit in England, in London. So she calls me up and she says, I have a 10 by 10 booth. And I said, no, you don't. So anyways, it kind of gave me the idea of let's talk a little bit about some terms used over for international shows. So her 10 by 10 booth would actually be a 3 meter by 3 meter stand, not booth. So yes, it's the same, and I said it very nicely to her. But the idea is that there's different languages and some basic things you really should know if you're going to exhibit overseas. So let's take 7 this week, and then next week I'll do another 7 terms, and we'll just see how it goes from there. Okay, so the first one, we already know that what we call a booth here in the United States is a stand over in Europe. Now, you know the pipe and drape that we use, the side rail and the back wall drape that we use here in the United States. Well, in European shows, that's called a shell scheme, because they don't really use pipe and drape. They actually take a shell, which is an aluminum extrusion and frames, to create the different booth separations for a show. Okay. The third term is a raised floor. Now, when Europeans come here and they want to do shows in the States, they're amazed that we don't do raised floors. Well, that's very common over in Europe, is that everyone has a raised floor. It's part of your booth package. It'll have handicap ramps. It'll have metal edges for trim edges. And they don't use a lot of carpeting overseas. They do a lot of materials, harder materials that will go on top of the raised floor. So just keep that in mind when you're doing shows in Europe. Okay, now another big term, which we kind of covered a little bit, is everything is in the metric system. So everything is in meters. If you have a 3 meter by 3 meter booth, meter you can pretty much factor at about 40 inches, so that's 120 inches, which is just about 10 feet. So every 3 meters is a 10-foot booth. So if you had a 20 by 20 exhibit, you would have a 6 meter by 6 meter booth, and so on. Okay, so that's the metric side. Okay, voltage, very important. When you look at some of your chargers for like your computers or laptops, look carefully in the back of the charger. The US current, which is 120 volt, 60 hertz, is not the same. In Europe, they're going to have different voltages, and it ranges between 220 and 240, and it's 50 hertz. So if you look at the back of your converters and all your equipment and stuff that you're taking, make sure that it spans the distance between 120 to 240 volt, and you'll be okay. If you don't have that, and this is where a lot of people get in trouble, is like lights on an exhibit or just older equipment that doesn't have the convertible power packs. So keep that in mind, because you'll need something called a step-down transformer, or to bring one with you, or to get one on show site. That's another term that we'll get to later. Okay, build and burn. What is that? Well, many shows in Europe, they have a much longer setup time, where they actually bring items in as raw materials, and they build the exhibit on the show floor. You see this a lot for walls. They do a lot of painting. They do a lot of caulking so that they're seamless. But it's a different style of exhibiting called build and burn. You build it once directly on the show floor, and then you knock it down and throw it away after the show is over. Now, the other term which you're going to be using a lot for international shows is kilos. Okay? So a kilo is basically the standard weight measurement. When you ship overseas, they're going to give you a kilo rate, not a per pound rate like we would have in the United States. Now, kilo is basically 2.2 pounds. So if you keep that in mind, when you get your pricing for air freight shipments or shipments going overseas, just realize that they're probably giving you prices in kilos and not in US dollars. As always, please respond with your questions and comments and let others know about ExhibitorLounge.com. Well, we'll see you next week. Until then, I'm your host, Michael Gray, telling you, relax in the Exhibitor Lounge.